Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Icewind Dale, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you are playing characters of Valravn, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, this is not the correct stream. It is Thursday. I'll see you on Friday. But for the rest of you, welcome. Do note that there will be many spoilers with the behind-the-scenes stream. We stream our sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Watch all of our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube channel, and read weekly session recaps at RogueWatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RogueWatson and join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. I should probably add the whole podcast thing and part of my opening spiel as well. You can listen to us on podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shout out to new patron this week, Jeremy. Thank you for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Hello, Nathan, Refus, Jeremy, Nuno, Infernus, Random Equinox. It's going pretty well. I'm trying to shake off being a little tired. It took me about half an hour to put that wonderful baby down for her nap. And in a room that is designed to make humans fall asleep. It's got the nice lighting. It's got the white noise machine, which plays like, raindrops. It's got a soundtrack on that plays like soothing video game music, mainly from the Endless Space and Endless Legends series. Shout out to Fly By No, who makes some amazing, very chill, relaxing music. So yeah, I'm still shaking off the effects of being a little sleepy just by sitting in that fucking room. We have a lot to talk about. We got a great show tonight. Because we're now getting to good Mead, which means we've done our Knoll Cave kind of side journey because I had a reduced party, which I thought went pretty well. We talked about that a lot in the Frostside chat. Good Mead, which is going to end up being the case that I'm going to end up doing two. Yes, dog, I can hear your nails. Tried trimming the other day and you didn't like it. What I'm going to end up doing is making two custom dungeons back to back, which I did not necessarily mean to do and is a little overwhelming for me as somebody who prefers to use a lot of, assets that already exist in the game as much as possible and content and stuff. So I can focus on kind of the story and what's going on instead of having to necessarily put maps together and do tokens and all that. That being said, and I mentioned this during last week's Crafting Icewind Dale as well, in terms of really expanding on this quest. And initially, I hadn't thought to do this. Like, if the players had gone to Good Mead first instead of A Beautiful Mine, I probably wouldn't have done any of that. I would have just done the Verbeeg's lair as written and had it be like, yeah, this Verbeeg just came and stole a bunch of mead, and now you got to go hunt him down and take him out. It's pretty basic, bare bones, almost randomly generated side quest. Like, if you can insert treat a quest like a Mad Libs, that's what I consider like randomly generated. Like, oh, a thing happened, a monster did it, you got to go fight that monster in this little mini dungeon. It's not terribly compelling as written, but a lot of these beginning quests in Chapter 1 aren't necessarily meant to be big, important story things. They are kind of designed to be just little quests to get people out of Tier 1. So I've decided to expand upon that, similar to what I did with the Black Swords quest, which also ended up being a lot of work for me, but I think turned out to be a really fun experience for the players and very satisfying for me. So in this case, I've created this full-on backstory involving the fact that the Verbeeg is actually just a dude. He's a employee at the Mead Hall, and something of a maybe a budding alchemist, maybe somebody who's has designs beyond being a somebody who works with the. I'm really kind of treating the Mead Hall like a whole employee, like science museum facility, like really going all in on it. And essentially, he's been experimenting by trying to create magic potions using the mead as a base. And then, being able to synthesize different magic potions because of different experiments and things that he's been doing. And he carved out a little lair, which is the Verbeeg's lair, and has been, doing these experiments. And I thought it'd be funny to do he specifically wants to create a potion of growth maybe even a permanent one, because he wants to impress a fellow coworker who works at the Mead Hall. Because there's a fun twist in the Verbeeg dungeon that has, once you take care of the dude, this female Verbeeg shows up, like wanting to like have a date with him or something, and it's supposed to be like this funny moment where she, of course, then goes and attacks the players too. So that'll be a fun twist if basically his plan was kind of successful. Maybe she was actually into him also. I'm not gonna put like a whole creepy thing on it. It was consensual. And like they both like basically ended up drinking the potion and then becoming Verbeegs. But in doing so, basically the steps to lead to this process was he was let's see, how do I explain this? Something went wrong basically, and he ended up getting a little sloppy and doing experiments at the Mead Hall itself, and then somehow his potions got into like the entire Mead system at the Mead Hall. Like it has contaminated everything, and thus turned it into a classic, like, this is a facility that's just meant to be in town, but it's become monstrous because of something that's happened. So in this case, it created a lot of like giant, it mutated all of the bees. So the Mead Hall is actually produced from honey mead, which is produced from bees, and transform them into giant bees, which I'm using the giant wasp stat block from Tomb Annihilation to use that, as well as literally turning the mead itself into like sentient oozes. And I was thinking about using the ochre jelly stat block. So I'm going to show you this map that I've cobbled together. This map is literally created from, and by the way, so we're skipping ahead to this because I don't really have any other plans for encounters. We already did that giant Knoll Cave encounter to get the players from Caer Dineval into Goodmead. I'm not really interested in doing other, encounters along the way. Again, the road should be relatively safe, and we did our big one. I might mention something about how, the animals are watching and they feel like they're being watched and all that jazz. Specifically because if they go towards East Haven, that would lead to another talking animal encounter, so maybe kind of tease the fact that, the crossroads of the animals there. Anyway, they will show up at Goodmead and then immediately be drawn into the Mead Hall, because that's where all the action is happening. So this map is cobbled together from 2 different maps plus assets from like a third map source. So, and I'll try to remember to leave the maps in the show notes, but specifically, I believe I put them in my notes, which Platinum patrons do have access to. So Seafoot Games is I subscribe to via Patreon. They create some really amazing maps. I haven't had a chance to use very many of them because a lot of them are very specific locations and areas, and I've got my set campaign. So it just, the few times it comes up where I see a map and I'm like, okay, that would fit my campaign, which is the opposite of, like, say, how Chris did his campaign last, which was all homebrew, whereas he looked at a map and said, oh, I'm definitely going to use this map and then make a thing around it. Mine's the opposite. Like, I'm like, okay, I have a thing that I need to do, and now I need to find a map to actually fit that. So I can't always use those maps, but in this case, I did. The base bottom layer of this map is the Alchemist Greenhouse Laboratory, because I'm trying to create, okay, what is a map that would have like a fucking bunch of like an apiary, which is literally a place where a bunch of bees are raised and bred and shit. Essentially like a greenhouse type facility, but for animals, in this case, insects. So I used that map as a baseline. Then I used another map from Seafoot Games called Illegal Brewery, and I literally cropped out just the brewery part, which is this area up here, and then placed it in this corner of the map. So I put it basically on top, laid it on top of the other map. And then to create a better entrance area, I used, I believe this, what I purchased on Roll20. This is, it looks insane from my point of view, but hopefully from the player's point of view, it'll make sense. And obviously from your point of view, you're seeing it from my point of view. So it just looks like a fucking disaster. But this is, of course, another, I believe, Gabriel Picard map called Slapdown Town Village, which has a whole bunch of just assets and buildings designed to go in a village, doors and buildings, and some are furnished, some are empty, and essentially just tried to use pieces of that, thank you, Jeremy, to create a better entryway. Because if you look at the bottom layer of this map, it's got like a bunch of statues. I mean, it's a cool map, but it doesn't fit what I needed, which was a an industrial type facility that was in this, you know, relatively small town. I was not looking for like a temple thing or anything like that. So the statue stuff just wasn't going to work for me. So I essentially layered this on top of it, and I can go over what all these rooms are, but it's going to be crazy because I'm literally creating this freaking dungeon from scratch. Because if you look at the actual information about the Mead Hall, it's two paragraphs. Use the exact same one. Nice. Which one? Because there's 3 different maps I'm using here. If you look at the information under where are we at? Good Mead. This is all the information we have for the Mead Hall. It's 2 paragraphs with like 4 sentences. That's it. Like, this is not a dungeon location. So I am basically building this from scratch in terms of how to create this dungeon. And keep in mind, I still plan on using the Verbeeg's layer as well. This is really going to be a 2-part dungeon quest, which I hope goes over pretty well, in that they will do a bunch of stuff here, and then that will then lead them towards the actual Verbeeg layer and the boss, which I'm still even trying to come up with. Do I want to paint the Doog character? I'm going to call him Dugan, I think, but because he was turned into a Verbeeg, and that's the thing that he didn't quite realize in his like Jekyll and Hyde transformation, is that even though he did get swole and became a Verbeeg, like became big and strong and stuff, his intellect went down exponentially at the same rate. But I don't know whether to make him a straight-up villain or to make him more of a sympathetic character, in that, yes, he was technically, you know, doing bad things on company time, but maybe I could paint it like it was an accident that he ended up corrupting the entire Mead Hall, and otherwise he was fine doing his own thing. And really kind of change the entire dynamic of this quest. So instead of it being he's this monster that, you know, destroyed... or you know, killed the speaker and ran off with some mead. Instead, I was thinking about leaning towards the angle of because of his actions, he inadvertently created this disaster at the Mead Hall, and then also transformed himself into a pseudo monster that the players can then go and deal with and figure out, you know, how do we treat this guy who's technically responsible for these actions. And maybe just leave that up to the players to see how they deal with it. Fell victim to one of the classic DM blunders. Most famous witches never get involved in land war in Asia. Why do humans always do this themselves? Yeah, I think the sympathetic would be more interesting for sure. So this dungeon has a lot it has to do, because first it has to be a fun-ass dungeon, you know, in terms of having enemies and exploration and all that, but I also need to explain the story of what happened through this dungeon through environmental storytelling, so that by the time the players are finished here, they have an understanding of what went down, and then maybe they'll have their own opinions on how to deal with the Verbeeg when they actually get there. And I am still like halfway through the process of actually making this damn thing, by the way. I've spent a lot of time putting the map together, putting the tokens together, doing all that, and now I'm actually doing the writing part of it, which as of right now, I'm maybe halfway through actually writing this particular dungeon content. So when the players first show up, I do have dynamic lighting in place, so you can kind of see what it's going to look like from their point of view, which, you know, again, the Rime is kind of annoying because it's not technically daylight. It's still like that weird darkness thing. So the book does point to the fact that the speaker's been killed, and there are 2 people that are kind of vying for control. One of them, the people kind of want, which is a woman named Olivessa, which it says she makes casks to hold Good Mead's famous brew. She's just kind of a blue-collar worker here. And the other one is a dwarf named Shandar something. And he's a logger who is in like the pocketbook of Nerith Max Sildanar, which could be a fun kind of tie there. My players did enjoy interacting with him. He's being blackmailed because the speaker's been killed and all that. So I'm going to kind of run with that, and instead I've kept those characters, but I've changed their elements a little bit. So in this case, Olivessa is going to be the like, I think, security manager or building manager, some kind of higher up in the Mead Hall organization, to where she is the one who is going to be the point of contact for the players. In other words, she was the one who Well, I think I need to figure out my timing on this. It's been a couple days since the players actually, since they got this mission to where they actually decided to come here. I don't decide when the speaker was actually killed. So I don't know if the speaker would have been the one to actually send in to Bryn Shander that they needed help, or if she would be. But anyway, she's the one that's left. And she's got some of her security team, and she is literally keeping a crowd from storming into this mead hall to try to figure out what's going on, because right now all they know is that something bad is happening in there and it's dangerous. So what I've got written down is that, you know, again, these bad things were happening over time. You know, they were Mead was going missing, which was Dugan stealing it for his own purposes. And then he started doing experiments in the mead hall itself, and I'm leaning towards the fact that he accidentally contaminated the entire like mead hall facility, and that's what created all these horrible problems. And that maybe that happened, you know, like the night before, and he was able to escape, or maybe it happened the night of. I need to work out those details, because what I was leaning towards is having the speaker with a team come in at night and basically try and do a stakeout and try to figure out what the fuck is going on here. We need to catch who's ever doing this. And maybe they even try to catch him, but he maybe he drinks a potion. Could be interesting, because then what I've got is a survivor of that of that night shift group. So maybe they actually did successfully find him, and then he drank a potion that would give it more clues as to what happened. And maybe in the altercation, some of the potions got loose and contaminated and created more problems. So that could be an interesting angle. But they don't really know. The people outside right here don't really know what's going on. That's kind of the point I want to draw. They just know something bad happened in there. It's a classic, like, you know, we need the players to go in and figure out what went wrong. So she will be able to, first of all, they'll have to diffuse the situation. There's literally a crowd coming up here, wanting to storm in here to figure out what's going on. And I'm making it because this mead hall literally employs most of the people in this town. It's a classic, like, you know, blue collar small town, of which this big facility, this factory, if you will, is essentially employing most of the town. So the fact that this place has been closed is a huge fucking deal. So you've got all these like employees and family and stuff that are really like up in arms and trying to figure out what's going on, and Olivessa is just trying to keep everything calm and keep them back while still hoping help arrives, which in this case will be help in form of the players. I did find a token of a red-bearded dwarf to represent Shandar, which he will be, of course, at the leader of the pack, is kind of like saying, hey, you know, don't we have rights to, and all this kind of shit. Which I'm hoping, you know, the players can just diffuse that, and then they will talk to Olivessa, where she will be able to tell them, you know, the speaker decided to be here overnight, which I guess the speaker is technically would be like the president and CEO of the company, but we'll say Olivessa is still like the manager of the meat hall, or like the building manager or something, where she would be, you know, pretty high up in charge. And she would be able to explain that the speaker went in with maybe a security team, or, you know, a night crew. I'm really going hard with like the corporate angle here, as much as I can in a fantasy world in a small town. And she came in the next day to figure out, you know, okay, what was going on, and open up. And when she walked in to the main facility, she was nearly killed by a giant like mutant bee. Like, it was just gigantic and flew at her. So she was obviously unprepared for that. And so I'm probably leaning towards all of that happening very recently, although that technically that event could have happened days ago. So all of that mutation happened probably over that one night, whenever that altercation happened, whenever the speaker spent the night there. But that could have happened days ago, and it's been, let's say the facility has been closed for days. She hasn't felt comfortable sending anybody in because they don't have anybody that's equipped to be able to deal with that, maybe necessarily. And she's been waiting for outside help in the form of contacting Bryn Shander and saying, we need some more help here because they are just a small town and they're not equipped to deal with this. And that would be certainly the marshals showing up. So maybe it's the meat hall has been quarantined essentially for a couple days, because so she would be able to tell the players about the mutant giant bees, but that's all that she would know. And the fact that the speaker and that team has not emerged in a couple days. Fire and alcohol, the cause of and answer to all of life's problems. The solution to all of life's problems, I believe, is the quote. The penalty bar. Things are going very bad. You know, it took me a long time to realize that verbig meant very big. Very, I can't say it. Very big. And now that I get it, it's very funny. So they won't know too much information other than a couple days ago, the speaker came in at night and was trying to stop a series of, let's say, thefts, right? And then she came in to open up the next day, and she was nearly killed by a giant bee. So she rushed outside and basically put the whole place under lockdown and has been trying to figure out what's going on. Maybe hasn't felt comfortable sending anybody else in or anything because they don't have anybody that can, deal with that. She's got some security, but the security is designed to keep people out, not to deal with fucking giant monstrous insects. And then I guess that's all she would know. Well, I could mention the fact that maybe because if she's the building manager, maybe she would know that there have been some missing employees lately. Maybe she's been in the meantime doing some research, because I initially was going to think maybe I'll have a survivor outside the players can talk to, but then I thought it's way better pacing if I put the survivor inside in the middle of the dungeon, because we're already going to have a big... I don't know why I have that on. Sorry, I forgot to turn that freaking... Yes, you can obviously discuss spoilers right now. Damn it. Keep forgetting to turn my timer off. There it is. It pops up unintentionally. I forgot what I was talking about. The survivor, because I've got too much social already here. And I was going to have, if there's an opportunity, Shandar the dwarf was going to come up to one of the players and be like, hey, if you can, let me in on what's going on in here, then I will give you, 50 gold or something, essentially doing the shady dealing thing, which the players can choose, if they want to accept that or tell on him or whatever else they want to do. I'm just going to throw all these problems at the players. So then they will begin the dungeon crawl, basically. And in fact, these tokens, did they? I guess everybody's short rested and healed up, because they definitely took... And here's the other interesting thing. I gotta ask all of you about this. I threw basically a whole dungeon crawl at the players in the form of the Knoll Cave, and but it was only at 3 party members. And I basically went through like almost all of Frey's hit points, and I did go through all of Valravan's spells, and I think most of Edmund's spells. So the weird thing is, I have drained the resources of 3 party members, but not the other 2. So bare minimum, I need to catch the other 2 up on the party draining. And then they were able to get a short rest in that cave. And then by the time they arrive to this town, it'll probably be late afternoon. Now, technically, if they wanted to, they could probably say, well, we're going to go get a long rest. Even though Olivessa would be like, I want you guys to go take care of this now, ideally. I would love to be able to, drag them into this whole dungeon, but I would feel bad because I did throw an entire dungeon crawl at them. And I know Valravan at least used all of his spells, so it would not be in good shape to help out at this dungeon, to be out of his resources. So I'm leaning towards maybe letting the players long rest again after they make it here. And the weird thing is, there's no inn listed in Goodmead whatsoever. Goodmead only has 2 locations that are mentioned, which is the Mead Hall and then this shrine, which is apparently just an empty temple, which it's mainly used for town gatherings. There's nobody at the shrine of Tempest, Shrine of the Flaming Sword. There's no mention of like an inn or anything, so I guess maybe they could get a bed and breakfast somewhere. Like it's very odd of where they could even long rest. But I don't want to necessarily deny them that either. Like they are in a town, in other words. Obviously, Olivessa would prefer they take care of this as soon as possible, so maybe I could offer some kind of incentive. But she wouldn't necessarily be in a situation to make demands either. Like she's kind of at the mercy of like, look, and you need to help us. Ideally sooner rather than later. So I'm kind of in sting operation. Very, very good. Enjoy your penalty bar. So I'm a little torn. I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts about how to handle the resting situation. They must have short rested, because I thought Frey would be heavily injured, but maybe she actually was able to fully heal. Get her character sheet. Only used 2 hit dice, actually. Maybe, I guess, plus the Song of Rest healed her right up. I don't remember Edmund didn't take any... well, Edmund must have used short... Let's see if he's used hit dice as well. And the other weird thing is I will have to kind of just backseat, like, drain the hit points of the 2 players who weren't here, because it really wouldn't be fair. Yeah, he used 3 hit dice. which he's actually got a lot more spell slots left. So really, I guess I just mainly, they're really fine. I just feel bad for Chris because he really did spend all of his spell slots in that Knoll Cave dungeon, and that's kind of just the way it ended up being balanced. So he'd be the only one that was like, oh god, I really need a long rest, and everybody else is like, we're fine. So that would kind of suck for him. They could get a long rest after dealing this dungeon and before they do the Verbeeg's lair. That might be a little more palatable. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily going to let them do that, Jay, because they had just started the day. I mean, D&D's so weird about the adventuring day anyway. You could literally travel for a full day and that's your day, or you could go in a cave for like an hour and then you have to immediately like just camp for like 16 hours after that. It's just a weird concept. And they had just started the day. They did the dungeon. I mean, it had been a couple hours, but it was not anywhere near long resting. And I don't know if that would have been the safest place to long rest anyway. I mean, it was a cave belonging to gnolls. How do you know other gnolls aren't going to, come back and stuff? So I was going to let them short rest, but not long rest there. But what my plan is, I'm trying to figure out how do I argue about not letting them long rest in the town, in which case I may just let them. Obviously, I've got it planned where I will bring them to the Mead Hall immediately, so they won't even have a chance to go rest first. They'll at least have to deal with this opening scene. But then after they speak with Olivessa, if they bring it up and say, okay, but can we go fucking sleep and come back tomorrow morning, she would be very upset about that. But I don't know if there would technically be any, penalizing there or something. Maybe, I don't know, she would write a strongly worded letter or something. Mechanically, it would be like, you get a better reward if you go now, maybe a thing, but I don't know if she would be technically be able to demand that. All right, so let's get to the dungeon crawl itself, which is, I've put little numbers on here to help myself in my notes as well. This opening area is a gift shop, because I figure the entrance is always going to be near a gift shop, which is pretty empty, but I figure if they really want to look around, they can maybe find something in the trinket table, roll on a D100 trinket. There's a locked door here. I don't know if any of them even have thieves tool. I think Edmund does, because he got into that one locked door, didn't he? I think he does. Yeah, he does have thieves tools. So if they make it into this locked door in Area 5, they can find some little minor treasure pieces in it. It's basically the storage for the gift shop, so it's like going to the back room. Area 6 is going to be very much like a corporate lobby, with like almost like a part museum though. You go to like the zoo or a museum and they've got like interactive booths and you can learn about shit. It would be that, but it would be all about the Mead Hall. So basically they expect people to come visit Good Mead and come do like the tour, right? Like it's the brewery tour. And that would be like a big room where you can do it. There's the gift shop and all that. I haven't really put anything physically in here because there's not a lot of good like assets I can throw in there. But what I did do is have the kind of classic security double fence thing, which is if you go to, I guess I can use the zoo example again. Like if you go to the zoo and you go to that part where you can go into a aviary with the birds just flying around free, like, and you can feed them with the little food sticks and stuff. They have those double gates there so that obviously somebody doesn't just open the door and all these fucking birds fly out, right? They have to, they've got this hallway and these gates so that you can close one. And it's like spaceships have that too. You can depressurize. It's that same fucking concept. And I created that here as a means because they don't want, to lose the bees and shit. So I was going to include like a minor trap here technically where like there's a warning that says, hey, make sure the doors are fully closed before you open the next one. And it can only fit, 4 people, which is going to be interesting because you have a 5-person party. And if you try and open it before the other one is closed, you take like lightning damage, like it shocks you. It's like all connected to this kind of security system. So that'd be kind of funny. Adventuring day is stupid. Marching 24 miles and fighting baddies along the way. Screw all that. Yeah. I liked watching your marching video, by the way. No fun. That was very entertaining. The can you actually do 24 miles in a day? Shout out to you for making that journey. Perhaps 2 players saw one of these strange creatures following the group this way. You can explain where they were, and you can have those 2 do a quick mini encounter. I don't have time for it, unfortunately, at this point. It's all my time is focused on this. What happened to those players is they were basically captured by the gnolls off screen, and then they woke up in that back room. Or sorry, I guess they were still unconscious during that final fight. So I was just going to drain their hit points just to, explain how they were attacked a little bit basically in the blizzard, I guess, and dragged onto this gnoll cave. So They weren't here, so that was kind of the solution, which I've done a few times, and I think it's worked out pretty well if I have a ahead of time to kind of work on that in terms of like, okay, if these players aren't here, maybe I can narratively move them somewhere else. So obviously this map does not come with beehives, so I found a weird looking kind of Roll20 asset for beehives, which is just a fucking mound of bees. And I wanted to get across the fact that this place has been mutated and does not normally look like this, with just basically the growth potion has accelerated the bees and mutated them, and in some cases enlarged them into much bigger, scarier forms, which are these giant wasp stat blocks, which I believe were from Tomb of Annihilation. There's a giant wasp, which of course a giant wasp is still only a medium beast because bees are pretty small. You know what? I just thought I need to change the name into giant bee because these are not wasps. Giant bees, even though they look very much like wasps. But don't let that fool you. I mean, that's the whole thing in D&D. They give you so many animal stat blocks, and they're like, look, just use, you know, if you need a panther, use the cat stat block, or the lion, or whatever it is. Giant bee. Why did I say giant bees? It's a giant bee. Bees, not the bees. There we go. Now, if you're thinking, oh, Thimbleweed's going to try to talk to these bees, I'm ahead of you on that. And yes, I assume he will try to talk to the bees. The bees are still beasts. But they're being controlled by a queen. And their intelligence is going to be very single-minded. You know, I want to get across the fact that bees and ants are legion. Like, they all kind of share the same mind link together. And so when the players first open this door, and yeah, Jay immediately came up with that. Yep. It will be combat. So the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to come in and, well, I don't know. Do I want to throw combat at them right off the bat, or they don't know to walk around a little bit? Basically, my plan is, like, as soon as they walk and jack with any of these beehives, giant bees will emerge and attack them, which I have 8 of them on the map. I am unsure if I'm going to unleash all 8 of them at once. It might be a thing where I do a group of 4 one round, and then a group of 4 the next round. Now, keep in mind, that's a lot of bees, but these bees have very little hit points and armor class. Like, basically, in almost all cases, 1 hit will kill them. Now, the player's only level 4, so they don't have multi-attack yet. So you're looking at, you know, you could easily kill, not maybe super easily, but you could take out 4 bees in one round with 4 players, depending on how the initiative works out. Offensive-wise, they're not too shabby. They have a +4, they're an average of 5, plus 3d6 poison damage, although you do get to make a con save to take half the poison damage. So, which is unfortunately a little bit fiddly when all these bees are attacking. They could be considered that, but basically my plan is, yes, if you want to talk to the bees, you can, but talking to them does not make them not hostile, right? If you look up Speak with Beasts, which I still have it on here, or sorry, Speak with Animals. Wait, I thought he uses Speak with, is that a different spell? His character sheet. But yes, this will be hopefully a chance for Thimbleweed to have some fun with it. His Beast Sense. That's okay. I think it's Speak with Animals is the one he uses then. I believe that's the spell. Okay. Which, you know, keep in mind it is a first level spell. The player is expending a resource to do that. Speak with Animals says you gain the ability to comprehend and communicate with beasts for the duration. And then it kind of reminds you that knowledge and awareness of many beasts is limited by their intelligence, but they can give you information about nearby locations and monsters, including whatever they can perceive or have perceived within the past day. Now, it does say you might be able to persuade a beast to perform a small favor for you at the DM's discretion. It is not charm animal, in other words. Didn't Wasps take down Manix and TO? Didn't everybody take down Manix into Annihilation? I don't remember specifically. Correct. You can speak... That's a great point. You can speak with people. That does not stop them from attacking you. That is an excellent, excellent point. Yeah, so that is the thing I'm going to get across, is that these are hostile animals still. Yeah, you can speak with them, which just means you will hear them essentially droning on about how, you know, invaders, for the queen, protect the queen, and have it be pretty hostile. Now, if Calm Emotions, I need to look that one up. If Thimbleweed, depending on the roleplay or the skill checks, I am willing to play around with that a little bit. I do kind of want this to be a bit of a combat encounter, but if if he specifically is wanting to, really role play and play this, then maybe it could be that some bees pick his little ass up and fly out towards the queen so he can have an audience with the queen while the other players are forced to fight the bees, which would be pretty funny. And if he talks good with the queen, then maybe the bees will stand down and they can have a conversation with the queen, which I do have fucking dialogue written for the bee queen. Remind me what, I think calm emotions, didn't that have to be humanoids or no? And this is assuming Valrobin gets his long rest before this dungeon because he is out of spell slots right now. Let's look up that one again. Yeah, it's a humanoid. So it's only humanoids. Between all of his spells, he's really good at taking care of humanoids and very limited in other ways. So, I am kind of prepared for that a little bit. In terms of if he wants to talk to them. Basically, just casting the spell is not going to get you out of a fight. But casting it and then really going hard on the role play or the social checks or anything that I want to choose, which, by the way, how do you guys rule that if somebody is using a social check on an animal? Is that technically animal handling, or because I almost feel like that would rather be like persuasion or deception or intimidation if you can talk with them, but then that oddly penalizes the ranger because the ranger would obviously be better at animal handling and nature checks than they would necessarily be at charisma checks. So I thought that was always a weird way of doing it. You could do, maybe it's a persuasion wisdom check weirdly instead of charisma. I don't know. So there's a weird way of ruling that. I'm not quite sure how to rule that. I'm interested if any of you have thoughts on that. And they will find basically just, areas of where the bees were taken care of and where, supplements were given and where they extract the honey and all that kind of thing down here. They won't really necessarily find evidence of what happened. Sleep would be very effective here. That's true. In that case, and like I said, I think I'm leaning towards just hitting them with bees in a wave, which I could up it to 10, maybe do 5 per player and then 5 the next round. But I think 8 would probably be enough. And then if you look at the dynamic lighting, I actually have this door partially open to tease the fact that the bees have been out here and have colonized this outer area. So the way this map was presented is there's this greenhouse here, and then there's this outdoor area, and then a bunch of buildings up here. So I'm flavoring that as being, okay, this was the apiary, in here, and then out here is just kind of an outdoor area where they're like growing trees, and they're trying to like create an environment for the bees. I haven't decided if the bees would normally be out here or not versus in this, greenhouse area. Maybe the greenhouse has like different kinds of bees or something, so I haven't quite determined on all that. I don't know how specific I want to get with all these details, by the way, because you could get really fucking lost in the weeds. And sometimes your players really care about that stuff and sometimes they don't. And it's a lot of work for me just to get the, the important stuff done versus all the backstory stuff. But anyway, I do have a similar encounter set up here, which is more waves of bees. And then I've got the bee queen, and I was looking up like, oh, there's I want to use just a giant wasp with max giant wasp with max hit points because that's not very powerful. Like, what can I use for animal handling? Okay, everybody's saying animal handling. What would I use for a bee queen? Well, there is a certain stat block from Descent into Avernus called the Hell Wasp, and this is a CR5 giant bug monster, and it's perfect. It's perfect for my needs. So this is literally the Hell Wasp, which I just renamed and called, why did I call it Wasp Queen? It's a bee queen. I cannot get this fucking wrapped around my head. The mutated bee queen. It's a mutated queen of bees. I'll say bee queen. And the Hell Wasp is a CR5 and pretty damn strong. It has AC of 19, which is fucking crazy for something not wearing armor. An average of 52 hit points, and has a multi-attack, one of them which has a chance to poison and paralyze you with an average of 15 damage, and the other one is an 11 damage sword talons with a +7 to hit. This is a straight up pretty badass little boss fight here, which, keep in mind, the players don't have to fight, because if Thimbleweed does his speak with beasts thing, speak with animals, even though it's considered a large monstrosity, I would allow him to be able to speak with the queen, and because the queen would technically turn into a quest giver at that point. instead of a boss fight, which would be you need to go kill, we want to expand, we want to take over this area. And obviously I've got, very stilted dialogue about how essentially her people have been oppressed and enslaved and forced to make honey for these people, which is not necessarily incorrect. You just don't think of, caring about insects for the most part, although we should care about bees. But in this case, from the bee point of view, it's like, oh shit, maybe, they're not too happy with their situation. And they don't really have any recollection necessarily of what happened here, only that they suddenly gained like a bigger, more power and more ascensions and things. And they want to expand to the rest of this building and basically take it over and have nobody else enter. So the quest turns into, still go into the, other areas and kill any enemies. And then, we will take over this entire facility, which would be an interesting dilemma for the PCs, because that would go in direct opposition to what Olivessa wants them to do, which is to basically clear this place out. Now, obviously, they don't want to lose their bees and their honey mead, but they would still have to deal with this monstrous bee. And if they put the bees if they leave the queen and basically, agree to have her spread out, Olivessa is not going to be fucking happy with that. She's like, what the fuck? Like, we need this facility back. We need to make mead for the whole 10 towns area. Like, we can't just do this. Now, the players could try to come up with some hilarious scheme, and they're like, okay, look, we'll really adjudicate like diplomacy here, and we'll try to work with the bees can work with you and do the honey thing. I'm technically willing to entertain that, even though that's going to take some a lot of thoughts on the players and some checks and everything to really solve this the quote unquote best way possible, which is to make everyone happy, which should still be very difficult. Like, even if I just don't see Olivessa and the other people like being okay with just suddenly working with the bees as fucking partners in this, especially because you just don't, and there's really no like guarantee that the bees won't just continue to spread and like kill people basically. So that would be an interesting dilemma for the players, where technically it would get them out of fighting the bees and this boss fight, but maybe lead to social problems with the actual town. So she's got some information where she'll be like, hey, there's, we want to spread out to at least these northern buildings and, take over everything else. We just need more room. But there's still dangerous things in these buildings. Now, she doesn't know what the danger is necessarily. She's not good at conveying that information. But all of this is, again, only if Thimbleweed actually rolls Speak with Animals, and he does the role play good in that first room, and he is brought, or maybe they fight their way through all those bees and then make it to this room, and then if he wants to, he can talk to them, or we can just treat it as a monster boss fight. I'm totally okay with either one of those things. I'm just trying to give the players more, interesting options essentially. I did roll hit points for all these individual bees. I don't believe I did it for our wasp, or bee. I keep calling it wasp, our bee boss. Which, okay, I just did, and we rolled 54. So that's above average. That's good enough. So that's what's in area 8 here, which is the kind of outdoor area. So basically that's the giant bee encounter. I put them all in the GM layer because just to kind of give me options, basically, because these hives can essentially spawn whatever bees I need them to. And I haven't decided yet if I want to engage combat as soon as they enter the room, or wait until they get near the hives, or do something else to basically trigger combat. So in any case, if I put them in the GM layer, that gives me all the options to move them around, decide how I want to handle it. What about adds the possible boss fight? Yes, obviously, if it turns into a fight, then she will not be alone. There will be plenty. I mean, that's the whole thing about bees, right? They've got their fucking hive, their swarm. And I could, that's something I didn't think about either. I could use the swarm of insects stat block. Why didn't I fucking think of that? As an additional add, where maybe they're not all gigantic. Why didn't I even think about that? Is that too fiddly to add the swarm? We don't have swarm of insects in here. Let's see, swarm, because that would be literally like the bee swarm. Is there not a swarm? Maybe a swarm of wasps. Yeah, there's a swarm of wasps. Not of a picture. Let's see. They have a +3 to hit, average 22 hit points. They've got twice as much hit point as a big bee. And they do a lot more damage, oddly enough. The Swarm of Wasps is much more deadly than a normal big bee. It's funny how that balanced out that way, isn't it? 22 hit points. They have damage resistance. Can't kill the queen unless they have the powerlifter from aliens. Nice. You know what? It's funny you should fucking say that, because I am literally planning on, the Dwergar have those hammerers, which is a cool stat block. I'm kind of planning on making that more of a powerlifter thing. I'm gonna play around with that. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I think we'll first see it in East Haven, actually, whenever they're trying to take apart the statue for Chardelin. And but try to play with the fact that it's this large like vehicle thing that one of them is operating, and the fact that they can target the Dwergar and maybe give it some more thing, like maybe just play around with that. But I'm using the power loader as a inspiration for that, for the Dwergar hammerer. Yeah, so this thing does, I guess, okay, the giant bee does do more damage. It does do more damage than a swarm. So I could, if I wanted to, I could play around with the swarms, because I want the fact that this doesn't happen all at once. It hasn't turned every single bee into a giant bee yet. It's kind of working its way through the process. Some of them are growing to certain sizes, but they're all being very aggressive and stuff. So I could certainly use the Swarm of Wasps. I'll just have to unfortunately come up with my own little picture for it, because right now they would look like just the generic default kind of Facebook picture. So in terms of the other rooms, I'm gonna try to run through this, because I don't know how far we'll get. Like I said, I don't have any really road encounters. Depending on how long these social encounters go, yeah, that's what the wasps look like. I have no clue how. Presumably, we're probably looking at 2 sessions here for this one dungeon. So room number 9 is a warehouse, because it's obviously factory would need somewhere to store its stuff that it's made. I'm going to play around with the fact that this is something that I just recently changed. I was initially going to have a survivor be like cowering, behind the crates, very like Newt from Aliens, where it's like the sole survivor and she's survived just from hiding and shit. But then I thought, well, if you were a part of that security team that went with the speaker, then you should be able to maybe hold your own a little bit. Like, again, these aren't adventurers, but they still have some like trained abilities, at least for a little bit. So I thought I would use maybe actually the scout stat block for the one survivor. I was going to name her Morin after one of the NPCs they meet along the road to the Verbeeg lair, which I don't think I'm going to use. The name is Fef Morin, which is just fucking random generator of names they come up with in these D&D books is ridiculous. But she will be a survivor, and that'll be an interesting twist, because there'll be like especially if they encounter the bees diplomatically and then get told to come in here and take out whatever the threat is, they will find that the bee threat, at least one of them, is just a survivor of the former security team who has been in here for several days. She's been able to kill a bee who's like wandered in here and maybe has been like eating that bee to stay alive, although you could spend a couple days I guess without. And obviously she's been able to drink because there's mead in barrels here that has not been contaminated. So, but the reason I have here is because it's a classic. Every good dungeon has a NPC somewhere that just relays information to the party, and that's basically what this is. Now, she could maybe technically join the party. I kind of just use the scout stat block. Maybe she's either got her bow or her short sword or something. And she could, I guess, technically be a combatant, not meant to be that powerful on her own. Probably suffering from exhaustion, though. Surviving off meat, absolutely. But she will be able to explain what I just said at the beginning of the stream about the backstory, that the speaker and her and maybe a couple others spent the night here to try to catch, whoever was, whatever was happening here, whoever was stealing the mead. They did catch somebody. Maybe, I don't know if we'll have Dugan with multiple people or not. I haven't quite worked out, because I want to have the end result is that Dugan, who now is Doog, and Gage, who is now Gag, have been transformed into the Verbeeg stat blocks. They've been like Hulkerized. So I just don't know how they necessarily got there and when. I still have to work out those details to make it as interesting as possible, and whether or not and how much information you give the players and all that. So I haven't quite nailed all of my backstory down, I guess, but I'll need to, because she's got a lot of that information, at least from her point of view, which is probably they did come across Dugan and possibly some others, and there was a fight broke out. You know, maybe he drank his potion, maybe if she was there, she drank hers, and they were large, or maybe they were already, maybe he's already enlarged at this point. I don't know. I figured all that out. And then during that fight, you know, whatever formulas he had on him, maybe it was like Joker style. He got like knocked into one of these vats, and he had a bunch of, ooh, that might be good. Maybe during the fight, maybe he got knocked over into one of these vats of liquid, and thus, because he had a bunch of potions on him, that contaminated the liquid and thus maybe transformed him as well. That could be interesting. But then he still made it out, as I need him to escape through maybe one of these grates. There's like a escape that leads more to the Verbeeg lair. Mimicking the warehouse. No, I don't need to mimic in the warehouse. So again, I'm still trying to figure all this out. You can tell I'm like brainstorming ideas even this late before the session starts. I don't think we're going to make it. We may make it to her. I don't think we're going to make it to the brewery themselves. But a lot of this depends. Again, if we turn a lot of this this bee fight into a dialogue scene, that's always going to change things. My plan is that when the mead got contaminated and transformed the bees as well, it also got into the mead itself, and I was thinking about literally turning the vats of mead into like semi-sentient oozes, which are the ochre jellies. I thought that would be a really fun twist that nobody would really see coming, or nobody knows what is happening here. So I decided to use ochre jelly. I don't know if there's a more interesting ooze that I should be using. Obviously, you could use the gelatinous cube, but I figure ochre jelly was the more appropriate thing for mead that has turned into a monstrous thing. And I've got several on here. I have no idea how many I want to actually use. Ochre jellies is something we haven't seen since, I believe, Prince of the Apocalypse. They are CR2s. And they've got that thing where I believe if you hit them with slashing or lightning damage, they split up and create multiple jellies. They have a +4 and deal a pretty solid amount of damage, average of 12 damage. No hit points, but, or sorry, no armor class, but good hit points. So I don't know how many to use, but I could have them. Basically, they're the big fight whenever the players come in here, and then they will you know, be able to see evidence of the speaker who has been killed by these oozes, which are just kind of taking over this area. Basically, that's what happened to the party. How much she knows about the ooze thing, I don't know how much to convey about that, because I do kind of want to make that a surprise thing. So maybe she actually, but the problem is she would obviously want to, you know, explore that area if she could. I guess this door needs to be locked, because otherwise she'd be able to escape out of here too, because why wouldn't she have done that? We'll have to say that these doors are all locked. And she can't get out of here because of the bees. It'd make more sense to put her in the manager's office up here, because that would be where she would have fled to. But if they're locked, then how did she make it in here? Crap. I've come up with a plot hole for my own device. How did she make it into this warehouse? Why would she have made it into this warehouse? But, well, we could have this be a door. Another door that goes into the brewery. That wouldn't change things too much. This is already, I think, meant to be a door here, and it goes underneath this kind of walkway that goes up, because there's stairs here, so I could just put a door here. Might not be a bad. That might be the easiest way to fix it. Celeste's gonna die. She's gonna try to drain a mead cask and swallow a jelly. Oh no. So funny you mentioned Celeste. I do think that if I were to ever give somebody a magic mop, this is the location to do it in, right? Because this is literally a mead hall. So that'd be really funny if there was like a case somewhere in this area that was like this mop in, like, it was in case of emergency, break glass, and we'll say, like, and there's a mop behind it, and we'll say, like, the glass has been, like, slightly broken. Maybe, like, there's a skeleton reaching out for it, but they didn't quite get to it. And the idea being that will be, like, a cool weapon for Celeste to be able to use, similar to, like, I get a lot of characters, their signature gear or weapons in Tomb of Annihilation. This one won't necessarily be like a personal quest for her, which the only weird thing is it's not like at the end of, you know, a personal quest arc. It just seems like the most appropriate place to put a mop in there. Bees jammed the door after they got in over the course of the 2 days. The bees jammed the door. I don't know if they're that intelligent. I mean, the other option is she ran out here. And then, yeah, I just can't figure out why she'd be in the warehouse. I think putting the door here is actually the easiest thing, because my plan was she fled the brewery, but couldn't make it outside because of the giant bees. And wouldn't have been able to make it out. I don't know what room 12 is going to be. I can like a loading, or no, 13 is going to be the loading unloading dock. Door's covered with honeycomb. So that, but why would she have fled? So we're saying she runs out of the main room. So if she runs out here, she's going to try to escape out here, even though this place is locked up. Maybe if she ran out of room 11. But why would she have turned up to 9 instead of going down into here? I guess all the bees are being mutated at that point, and maybe she's just trying to duck inside an area. Yeah, you could do it like that. They weren't quite, they were just starting to come online, maybe. I mean, there is a way to do that. It doesn't change things too much if we include the door here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll see whatever is most interesting. Because it's not that big of a deal to go back out and through here. It is a big deal if they're fleeing the bees. What I've got in 13, by the way, you see all these kind of dwarves back here. This is just the generic bandit stat block, but I thought it'd be fun if, while Shander is trying to get information from the players and kind of literally paying them information, it's like, hey, figure out what's going on, he has secretly hired a group of his cronies to basically break into this place and try to take advantage of the fact that there is no Mead coming out. He doesn't necessarily know what happened here, so he's not like, you know, the top villain or anything. He's just opportunistic, trying to take advantage of the situation. So they are literally trying to break into the actually, it'd make more sense if they were breaking into here, because this is where the storage is. So they're trying to break in and basically steal the mead so that they can get exclusive access to the mead itself, which you know, even though it's strictly like Olivessa would have locked it down, maybe there could be some guards back here that they've tied up. That would probably be, you know, or knocked out or something. Like there's like a guard here in the door that's kind of slumped over. That would make sense. Yeah, definitely the place is locked up. Like that was for sure the idea. So it makes sense the places are locked up. I'm just trying to figure out what her literal track was to escape. And she ended up in this storage building. So yeah, maybe she just fled out of room 11, and that's when she noticed, you know, all these bees suddenly coming online, and she couldn't go back the way she came because that was dangerous. So she just ran, and maybe because she knew the bees were in here, she ran into this warehouse and was able to shut this door, and then you know, and that's why there was a bee or two in here that's dead, and she's in there. Okay, that I could see that making sense. She's been kind of holed up in here. But this area is probably locked up, and unfortunately she doesn't have the key, but she could mention the fact that the speaker would have the key, but she hasn't felt brave enough to go and check it out. So that's I've got a lot going on in this dungeon. It's hopefully going to be really fun. I still have a lot of kinks to work out in terms of the story and the information and what actually happened here. So that I can kind of build this environmental storytelling and tell these events of how, you know, this person was able to basically create a whole mess of a situation here and then escape, to where the players should A, need to deal with this mead hall first and all the various things that are happening here, and then B, follow the trail, which I will have like an escape hatch that leads to his lair, and be able to follow up with that and deal with him, which definitely won't happen this week. And like I said, we'll probably be spending 2 weeks, honestly, on this Mead Hall dungeon. And you can help me decide, like, if I do want to use ochre jellies, or if I want to use, and how many, and how I want to introduce this combat encounter, and all that good stuff. But as you can tell, I've got a lot of grand plans for an area that literally has about 4 sentences used to describe it, in order to make this area a lot more, hopefully, interesting and dynamic. And then after this, I need to take a fucking break from doing all these insane big dungeon things, and hopefully we can get to something that's from the book, because between this, the Knoll Cave, and fucking Black Sword's Caer Dineval Outpost, I have been putting a lot of effort into making all of these areas more interesting. And I'd like to use more stuff from the book for at least the next one, hopefully. I think I've come up to the end of my time for crafting Icewind Dale, however, so I think that will do it for this week. If you enjoy the content and the streams, please do check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Wizard Princess, Christopher Thomas, Captain Mike, Adam, Aiden, Stan, Nathan, Alex, Chad, Alexander, Dan, Cam, and Quizat, Hatterack. And gold patrons: RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Arash, Olympus Buds, Jerome, Sclinia, Nick, Farty Mick, Butterplants, Blood Angel, Veronis, Baboon, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, and James. I will see you all for D&D tomorrow night.